This is TWiT.
Let's talk about TikTok. The clock is ticking, I guess, right? A court has ruled that law that says divest or shut down in the United States is legal, is valid, and now it's coming down to January 19th, the day before Inauguration Day. It's for real this time. New York Times says TikTok creators flooding the social network with videos on Friday after judges upheld that law. You must have a TikTok. You even said that you knew that if you didn't go to the Taylor Swift concert, Christina, that you'd see it on TikTok.
Yes. I don't post on TikTok much, but yes, I have a TikTok and I consume a lot of TikTok. I've also been on record as being very uncomfortable with this legislation, this new law. Whatever privacy concerns people have about TikTok, and I'm not saying they're invalid. I think those same privacy concerns, frankly, exist for all of our social networks. And if we really want to address those things, then we should address them in terms of data protection, sharing, and whatnot. I don't like the way this was carved out. I don't like the specificity in which this law targeted one specific company for what I think are pretty gross reasons. I felt that way in 2019 under the Trump administration. I felt that way under the Biden administration, and this is going to be interesting. I mean, TikTok has already said they're going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. And we'll see if they can make any sort of decision before January 19th, or if there will be any stay in lieu of hearing that, assuming the Supreme Court wants to hear this case.
Yeah, they may not get there. I mean, this is the U.S.
Right.
Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia denying its petition to overturn the law. So all they can do now is say, yeah, we're taking it to the highest court in the land, and then it's up to the Supreme Court to give them cert. And this all has to happen before January 19th.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder. Look, I've mentioned this before. I have a little bit of a dog in this hunt. My son became a TikTok star a year ago. TikTok gave him his business. If it weren't for TikTok, nobody would have ever heard of Salt Hank, but he had 2.5 million followers on TikTok, has done the same on Instagram, has a best-selling cookbooks in stores right now, all because of TikTok. In fact, he's opening his first restaurant in New York City in the spring or in the early summer. Again, all because of TikTok. And the key with TikTok, Benito once said this, our producer, who's on vacation, by the way. I hope he's having a good time in the Philippines. Anthony Nielsen filling in for him today. Benito said, if you're going to start something these days, you better start it somewhere where you can go viral. Whether it's a podcast, videos, book author, newsletter. Because there's so much content, unless you're on a platform that can promote you virally, you don't have a chance, right? Is that true?
Yeah.
I think so.
I mean, TikTok has an amazing generational reach. It's forcing cultural trends. It's forcing creativity, innovation. So I think it's got a lot of positives. I think it's it's interesting that they're focusing on the negatives here.
I mean, people would say, oh, well, your son could just have done the same thing on Insta with Reels, which is, I guess, true. But then that raises the issue, is that the real reason that we're shutting down TikTok? Because we want Mark Zuckerberg's, it's a U.S. company after all.
Right. Which is my issue with it, frankly, right? Is that what is the real reason? We're told, very nebulous, without any specificity, national security concerns. We're given no proof. We're not, told anything beyond just, we think this is bad. Meanwhile, technologists who actually look at this, and let's also be honest, there are many, many, many thousands, tens of thousands of Americans who work at TikTok, who work at ByteDance, who are saying this is not how this works. This is not, exfiltrating your data. We're not, selling things to China. I'll also point out your data is already being sold to China and other countries, right. And your internet service provider is doing it. And that's fully legal.
And data brokers. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Correct. This is already happening. So if this is what we're against, I'm in full agreement. let's pass that legislation.
Yeah.
I don't like how this is being targeted against one company in what, yes, does look like it was very clear in 2019, which granted, I know is a different situation than this current law. But in 2019, when the first, movement of they have to divest or be sold to a U.S. company thing, that was a very clear, we don't like that another company is making money in these platforms and is building momentum, and we don't like that we don't have a piece of the pie. That was what the situation was.
And
then.
even worse, if it had been maybe a Scandinavian company like Spotify, maybe we wouldn't worry about it so much.
Maybe we wouldn't worry about it at all. Right.
People.
Well,
precisely.
I mean, the thing that does concern me, and I think there is some evidence for this, is that stuff that the Chinese government would prefer you not think about does appear to be harder to find on TikTok. That is concerning to me. It's not the only thing that concerns me. I'm also concerned about the fact that on Twitter, stuff that Elon Musk would prefer you to not think about is increasingly hard to find.
And on MSNBC and on Fox and every other media these days.
I was going to say, can we make, I mean, you're not wrong about that, Harry, but can we be upset and be waving our hands about how awful it is that certain content is being, suppressed on one platform when we mention that about other platforms? And the response is, well, it's the platform's choice about what to do. Now, again, if we want to have, laws out there about how those decisions are shown to people so that they are aware that things are being suppressed or that they are aware that there's a point of view, then I'm fine with that. But I just don't see the difference between what, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, anything else that is not just purely, determined by a chronological feed. Anybody that does an algorithmic determination, I don't understand what the real difference is, other than this is the Chinese government ostensibly versus this is, Mark Zuckerberg.
What if you could wave a wand and say, you should only be able to access a social network that is created in your country by people in your country, whatever your country is, China, Venezuela, the United States, Mexico, Canada. If you're Canadian, you have to use a Canadian social network. What if we did that? Then you wouldn't have to worry about influence campaigns. You wouldn't have to worry, right? Or maybe not, actually. Because Twitter is the United States, and there's plenty of influence campaigns going on from Russia and China. But let's say you did that. Is that a good thing? No, because a social network is about a global community. That's the good thing about it.
I have to say, I feel a little bit less blithe than maybe you folks do about a social network under the influence of the Chinese government not being something to have concerns about. That said, as far as I know, there's not a lot of evidence that they are mining people's data or doing stuff that's harmful to individual users. But I don't think the concern about it is unreasonable. And I don't think Sweden and China should be considered in exactly the same way.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish your concerns, because that's true. In fact, this is what the court said.
That said, I feel like I don't know enough about this to say yes. I think this is a great idea to pull it away from the current owners. I acknowledge the fact that I don't understand everything about it.
The U.S. District Court, which presumably may have seen more than we see as private citizens, TikTok argued the law unfair. This is from the New York Times. Unfairly singled out the company. A ban would infringe on the free speech rights of American users. The judges said the law was, quote, carefully crafted to deal with only control by a foreign adversary, end quote. It did not run afoul of the First Amendment. The ruling acknowledged Americans would, quote, lose access to an outlet for expression, a source of community, and even a means of income, end quote, but that Congress had weighed those risks against national security concerns. And I guess that's really what you're saying, Harry, is if given all the evidence, the national security concern is genuine, that outweighs all the other things, especially since they're all alternatives to TikTok, like YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels.
I'm not going that far because I'm not sure whether it's really been proved that the national security concern. We
don't know because they won't tell us. They will only tell Congress.
Exactly. I mean, I think being concerned about it is legitimate. This action, I'm not saying I support because it is pretty fuzzy, and I think it would be a shame if TikTok goes away versus it continuing on or somebody else taking it over in a way that's not too big a blip for all the people who love it.
the thing that bothers me about this, and I said this months ago, so I'm repeating myself. If people have heard me say this before, I apologize. Is that I agree that we shouldn't just dismiss the security concerns, and if there is real evidence there that we haven't seen, and that for whatever reason they haven't shown us, mea culpa, I will take that on. However, there has been a process historically. There is a process in the United States government known as CFIUS, and it's CFIUS is I believe the acronym.
Yeah, the Committee for Investment in the United States.
Right.
For foreign investment in the United States.
For foreign investment in the United States. Yeah. And that has before forced companies to either, decouple from, foreign ownership.
Yeah.
There's a process. That TikTok has been basically in that process for years under 2 administrations. It has not moved forward, presumably because the evidence, shown hasn't gone anywhere. This isn't a situation like ZTE or Huawei, where I think there are very real concerns and very real evidence, especially with ZTE, which is why that equipment is not allowed in the United States or many other countries. Same with some of Huawei's equipment, where you should say, yes, a ban is absolutely, correct here. And there are real national security concerns, and the companies have done things that are hiding, what they're doing. But again, the CFIUS process, which has forced, foreign investment before, this is a known process, has been going on, I think at this point, I think it's 5 years. And I'm bothered by the fact that we are now potentially losing access to something for reasons that even if we're talking about the best case scenario, I don't have any confidence that that's the case. Like basically the government, has said, like the Congress said, trust me. And I'm just going to be honest, me, Christina Warren, individual citizen, I don't trust you. And
that's a big problem, by the way, in our polity in general, is that we have now decided we no longer trust politicians of any stripe. Hey, thank you for watching this little snippet from our big show, the News Roundtable, This Week in Tech. I'm Leo Laporte. Each week we cover the week's tech news, in-depth analysis, but it's also fun and engaging. You'll find it at TWiT.tv along with all of our shows. And if you want more, just hit the subscribe button, and we'll be sure to bring you a lot more great content. Thanks for listening.